This is not the beginning of this video. This is the source. Days of reading, sources checked against sources, a script rewritten until the argument held. Then, decisions about every image you will see, what it illustrates, what it cannot claim. There is another way to do this. One prompt, one output, no judgment in between. We know what YouTube is full of. The difference is not in the tool. It never was. McLuhan wrote that we shape our tools, and thereafter, our tools shape us. That sentence is why this opening demands a different perspective. This architecture of thought, drafted by machines, yet built on rigorous research. The core that cannot be delegated is what defines this. The pattern McLuhan named goes back 300,000 years. Every tool humans made remade them. The printing press changed what we called knowledge. The microphone changed what we called a voice. Each time there was panic. Each time, a question no one could answer. What do we lose, and what do we gain? We are in that moment now. Again. And by the way, I am Brian. You know my voice, and I am here today as an editorial choice, a part of the method. Let us begin. Every episode of Tender Reason begins with a conflict. On one side, what I want to investigate. On the other, what the platform already knows people are searching for. Getting those two things to meet, that is the first discipline. YouTube Studio and VidIQ are not my content directors. They are the radar. VidIQ is built on YouTube's API and certification program that processes large-scale behavioral data from YouTube's ecosystem and estimates where search volume outpaces competition. It can estimate views per hour before a single frame is recorded. Millions of creators use it to find what performs. I use it to confirm that what I already want to say has an audience waiting for it. There is a difference. Perplexity does the same for angles, not as a fact checker yet, but as a cartographer. Tens of millions of people now use it every month. Its architecture reads the live web and anchors each answer to cited sources. It retrieves. I decide what holds. When I search for what has not yet been said about a subject, Perplexity shows me where the silence might be. I don't use NotebookLM only to summarize. That would waste half of what it offers. The first movement is overview, reading dozens of papers, essays, transcripts, sometimes entire books, building the ABCs of a subject I don't yet master, understanding the terrain before choosing the path. The second movement is pressure. I cross what I find in NotebookLM with live data from Perplexity. I activate web research inside the notebook itself. Some consensuses hold, others crack. The large educational and scientific channels on YouTube work at a truly high level. They are a real inspiration. But science is not a fixed point, it is a movement. It does not work with dogmas. It works with truths in transition. That is exactly where an angle either exists or it doesn't. Documentary teams at major networks have worked this way for generations. Researchers, historians, fact-checkers, each assigned to a single layer of truth. The auteur behind Tender Reason is one of them, trained as a historian, practiced as a teacher, not on prompts, on primary sources, on the discipline of reading what was actually said, not what was later summarized. What changes with AI is not the discipline, it is the scale at which one person can now apply it. Historical cinema understood this before YouTube existed. The research was always the foundation. The camera was always second. The research has an output, not a summary, a position. When the auteur behind Tender Reason processed giant virus science, 2 million tokens, through NotebookLM and Gemini, the tools did not deliver a consensus. They delivered a fracture. The conclusion was, forget pandemics. It went against the loudest signals on the internet. It required a historian to read that fracture, evaluate it, and decide it was worth defending. Charlie Chaplin did not refuse sound because he feared technology. He refused it because he had mastered silence as a language. He understood that a new medium demands a new discipline, not merely new equipment. When he finally spoke, on his own terms, the result was not a concession, it was a choice. This is what the research stage asks for, not a prompt, a position, and a person capable of being responsible for it. A position needs a script. Science, philosophy, and literature translated into language that thousands can hear. This does not happen by pasting a prompt into a chat. It happens through a briefing system developed over the past year, beginning before the channel launched. Themes, sub-themes, narrative priorities, a predefined structure built through deep study of audiovisual writing for YouTube. What is already emerging, skills, co-work, Claude code, points toward an even broader reach for a single creator. Claude receives this briefing as the contracted writer. What makes it the right contractor is measurable. In the LMSYS chatbot arena, one of the largest blind, crowdsourced benchmarks for language models, Claude ranks among the top systems overall. Humans vote on the best answer without knowing which AI generated it. The reason is steerability. It follows precise tone directives, bans the cliches that expose AI-generated text, and holds editorial identity across 200,000 tokens with 99% memory precision. In practice, it can ingest an entire editorial manual and dozens of previous scripts in a single session without losing the thread. One layer here is worth naming. This script was drafted by Claude about the process of working with Claude, under direction from a human who decided what it should and should not say. That is not irony, that is the argument in practice. Think about the last song that got stuck in your head. There is a reasonable chance it was shaped by a tool built to find oil, not as metaphor, literally. Did you know that most of what you hear today runs through pitch correction software built by a scientist who spent his career mapping underground rock? That the sound defining a generation of pop came from a setting its inventor never meant to use. Andy Hildebrand spent 13 years at Exxon using mathematics to find patterns in sound waves moving through rock. He held a PhD in signal processing. Music was his first love. He played flute professionally. The spark came at a music industry meeting. Someone joked about wanting a device that kept singers in tune. In 1997, he released Auto-Tune to free performers from worrying about pitch. No one in their right mind would ever use that setting. Cher's producer used it anyway in 1998, out of desperation. Cher loved it immediately. T-Pain turned the sound into a signature. Bon Iver turned the signature into art. Same code, 3 intentions. The algorithm did not make the choice. The human did. Hildebrand put it simply, I just build the car. I don't drive it down the wrong side of the road. The script is set. The argument holds. The last layer is the hardest and the most granular. Perplexity enters here, not as decoration, but as the final instrument of pressure. It searches the live web, aligns the claims with academic sources, and forces the text to answer for itself. That means 3 passes: truth, coherence, and tone. Whether the data holds, whether the language says exactly what it should, whether the final style carries the weight of the argument. This is the stage most creators skip. It is also, without fail, where the most learning happens. Not about tools, about the subject itself. The script is finished. Now it needs a world to live in. Theo 3.1 generates what no stock library holds: specific visual moments built to serve specific ideas. But every 8-second clip arrives with its own errors, anatomical failures, impossible geometries, visual noise that degrades the argument it was meant to carry. Each clip is reviewed by the auteur behind tender reason. The errors are cut, not by an algorithm deciding what looks wrong, by someone who knows what the idea needed. When VO fails, the replacement is deliberate. Public domain footage, Canva stock, Adobe collections, not compensations, positions. A considered choice about what kind of image carries authority and what kind doesn't. There is another kind of production that skips this entirely. Generators set to batch output. Prompts designed for volume, not intention. The results fill timelines without passing through a single human judgment. These videos accumulate hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. Screened in a cinema, even an empty one, no one in their right mind would buy the ticket. The aberrations are not bugs. They are the signature of a process that never included a criterion. Decades before any of this existed, Walter Murch, the editor behind Apocalypse Now and The English Patient, described the horizon of his craft. He called it a black box capable of converting thoughts directly into image. A prompt to VO 3.1 is that box. The discipline is everything that happens before and after the box opens. Tools like Cdance 2.0 have pushed that horizon further. They are not the tools used here, but they confirm the direction. Murch returns in the same book, different register, not prophet, practitioner. His rule of 6 places emotion at the top of every editing decision. Above continuity, above logic, above chronology. His measure is precise. What do you want the audience to feel? Not the cuts, not the shots, not the story. What remains is how they felt. The same test applies to every clip in the final edit here. An error that survives the visual pass will appear in the finished video. Some have, in videos already published. The discipline is not a guarantee, it is a practice. The correction is to cut what breaks the emotional truth, to preserve what holds it, regardless of whether a human or a machine produced the frame. That is not 2 operations, it is 1. For certain types of content, this conversation is temporary. Rumors and interface leaks in the days before Google I/O 2026 point to a model called Gemini Omni, native multimodality and near-instant response. If those rumors hold, they confirm a direction Murch already understood decades ago. The tools will close the gap. What will not close is the distance between output and intention. That distance is where the criterion lives. The difference is not the code, it is your human criterion. That criterion, however, is not equally demanded of everyone. Major newspapers use AI in their newsrooms without disclosing it. Network television uses AI-assisted editing without a label. Hollywood uses synthetic voices and generated backgrounds without a credit. The batch output creator does the same, just with less budget and the same absence of criterion. The industry has always moved faster than its declarations. Creators working independently carry a different obligation. The first is legal. Creators are required to declare when realistic AI-generated content is part of a video. That declaration is not optional. It is a rule. The second is ethical and creative. To be explicit about the collaboration, because the discipline only means something if it is visible. What cannot be named cannot be examined. What cannot be examined cannot be improved. These 2 obligations are not a burden. They are the advantage of working in the window, the moment before the rules calcify, before the tools become invisible, before the conversation disappears. The discipline built now is the one that survives when the tools change. And they will change. The question is whether the criterion changes with them or holds, whether the position holds or was never a position at all. The sources and references behind this episode are in the description. This is the AI saga, Science, Soul, and Silicon, and the Philosophy playlist. New videos every week. Because the tools will not wait. And the discipline is not a feature you activate. It is the part that cannot be delegated. We shaped these tools. The question now is whether they shape us back or whether the criterion holds.